Wow. Jimmy, are you telling me that Fife baby boomers and their 22,088 spare bedrooms exist? So I think we're just going to blame all the baby boomers for the problem with the housing.
Yeah, no, I'm going to blame somebody.
I am glad that I am 2 years just a wee bit too late to be in the baby boomer category. I'd be castigating myself. Anyway, look, whilst we are around 12 months away from receiving the results of the Scottish 2022 census, south of the border, well, north of the border now, as their census was in 2021 for south of the border, the results are starting to come out for them as well. And one interesting statistic in this is the growth in the number of spare rooms and spare bedrooms, for example. So the spare bedrooms between 2011 and the 2021 census. So I wanted to therefore apply that average south of the border growth in those types of bedrooms to the results of the 2011 of the Fife as well. So of course I'm making certain assumptions, yet what I'm seeing in the local property market, I don't think they're too far off the mark. Additionally, Jimmy, this is a mental figure. Additionally, there's 33,366 spare bedrooms that will have been locked out of the Fife housing market since 2011. As Britain's ageing population, this is what it's all about, means that the country's stock of homes is being used more unproductively. What is the number of spare bedrooms between 2011 and 2021, Jimmy?
Well, the number of spare bedrooms in Fife between 2011 and 2021 will increase from 182,975 to 216,612.
That's a crazy statistic. Eh?
That's
considering, I mean, there's about 170,000 houses in Fife itself. So right about 170,000. So you've got 182,975,000 spare bedrooms, and that was in 2011. So that's almost just over one for every household. But now that's actually going up a wee bit more dramatically. The number of Fife households living in properties with at least 2 spare bedrooms, i.e., a spare bedroom as well, will increase by 22,088 from 67,964 households to 90,052 households between those 10 years, if you take that in extrapolation. This means actually that 52.3% of Fife households will have 2 or more spare bedrooms. That's over half.
That's I can't actually believe that. Well, the numbers don't lie, but that's amazing when you think about the amount of people that you see that are, or you hear, or that are struggling for extra space.
What do you think's caused that problem then?
I think people find it a lot when people need to downsize. On what I see when I speak to customers and clients when I go out and value the home, there's a big sentimental attachment to properties and families growing up there, grandkids coming to stay around. So I think it's the sentimental factor and the comfort of being in the home that they've always known and loved. I think that's the biggest thing.
Do you think as well it's maybe the point that they're actually locked into it because there's nowhere to downsize to?
Well, that's knowing the article that we're discussing today, I know that's the case when the numbers come up when we get to that part about the number of bungalows being built. But yeah, that is a big factor. I mean, you have the Lockheed Homes development. If you're just looking at Fife bungalows, where was the last bungalow development built apart from Lockheed Homes? The only other one I can think of is the one in Daresey, but there were only a few homes there, and the price point for them were above what most people in Fife can afford. I think they were all 350,000 plus.
Yeah, I think what's happening here, and the difficulty with the 350,000 plus was the very fact that the building standards and the regulations nowadays, and what they need to actually comply with in order to get that, it means it's actually more to build the property than it ever was before, and you're actually better off buying a resale, which is I wouldn't say it's a second-hand property, but it's somebody else's house, but it's actually been built already. Yeah. Because the more they build new ones, the more stringent the regulations are now for building standards, and also for sustainability, also for energy efficiency, also for solar and wind and whatever it is, ground source heat pumps and all the rest of the things. And they add a huge amount of value onto that. And that's what I see as causing the mismatch. This is why when social housing was mentioned about, why is the council, and this is a bit controversial, why is the council buying properties in the private market from us, from estate agents, and actually locking out first-time buyers effectively? And my answer to that is, or their answer, not my answer, this is their answer, by the way, it costs them more to build a new property than it actually does to buy that existing resale property. Now, whether you agree or disagree, the fact that they're in competition against first-time buyers, and how controversial is that, considering the fact that they're castigating investors for taking the first-time buyers' homes? Pot calling the kettle black, maybe, is the expression that would spring to mind. So let's come back to this, though. It isn't just a local issue. I mean, Britain has 8.9 million properties with spare bedrooms. In other words, what we mean is they have 2 or more spare bedrooms. So let's have a wee look at this graph then, because I thought here's one I produced earlier to let you see that in comparison. So here we go there. Okay, so 2 or more spare bedrooms. This is in Fife bedroom households, 2011 versus 2021. 2 or more spare bedrooms. In 2011, it was 42%. Now it's 52%. 1 spare bedroom, 29% versus 21. So that's dropping. The 0 spare bedrooms is 22 versus 18, and that's dropped because obviously it's gone up right there with the 2 or more. So you can see that, and then less than 1 spare bedroom is between 5 versus 6, and minus 2 spare bedrooms. In other words, they've got more people living in it than what they actually need, if that makes sense, as 1 versus 1. So that's obviously why it's going to be low. But it's this big, massive number here. It's over 50%. Over half the households in Fife have 2 or more spare bedrooms, according to the statistics. Very surprising. Now, before I dive deep into the issue of the spare bedrooms, let me look at the occupancy. Oh, actually, Jimmy, do you want to look at the occupancy rate of all the households in the country?
There are 8.26 million households with 1 spare bedroom, and there's 6.5 million households with no spare bedrooms.
Yeah.
I.e., the household's accommodation has an ideal number of bedrooms. There's 880,000 households where they are classed as overcrowded under the bedroom standard by 1 bedroom. And there's 173,751 households where they are classed as overcrowded under the bedroom standard by 2 bedrooms. So there's big numbers there on being overcrowded properties. And when you look at the numbers that have spare bedrooms, there's no reason, when you think about it, mathematically, look at our numbers, there should be no households that are ever overcrowded by looking at it.
Yeah. Instantly enough, Andrea actually says, and you're absolutely right, Andrea, I'm not sure if it's fair to blame the housing crisis on the people who have worked hard to buy their larger homes and hold on to them, especially if they're still able to afford to keep them. The difficulty is, Andrea,
got more than 2 bedrooms.
Yeah, they've got more than 2. Well, Andrea's probably got 2 or more spare bedrooms as well. Shame on you, Andrea. No, sorry. If anybody knows, we're actually just joking, because when Andrea works with us. So you're absolutely right, Andrea, and we're not blaming anybody. What's coming across here, though, is the very fact that the difficulty is most people don't want to keep their property, especially places like St Andrews or the East Neuk. But the difficulty is they can't downsize. And even Glenrothes and Leadenmouths like that as well. They can't actually downsize to an adequate property. I've got it now where we're about to put one on the London Links, and it's a lot bigger, and they want to downsize, but we have to try and get an elongated timeline, somebody to fit into that, in order for them to find an adequate property all on one level, which is either a detached or semi-detached bungalow or a terrace bungalow in the London Links area, because they want to continue to live there, but they want at least 2 bedrooms. And you know what it's like. It's like hen's teeth.
Yeah. Yeah, they certainly are, and that's a big problem of people when not only trying to find something, but the reality of when they go and view it as well is trying to come to terms with the size difference, and they always think, well, I'm going to get my stuff, etc., etc. So
Yeah.
it's good to start the process early so you can get a feel and know exactly what's important to you and not.
Yeah, look, Andrea said this: it's time for the council to make more of their stock and house people in properties that are suitable for their needs. What do you think of that, Jimmy? About the council really having to take control of this and actually make more social and affordable housing, which is adequate for the more elderly population.
Yeah, I think everybody needs to, not only the council but builders as well, need to be held accountable for certain developments or building a certain amount of social housing, and then also a certain amount of bungalows as well to help everybody. It's they're in a money making business like every business
The
is, but there
difficulty
should be.
here's the difficulty, and I'll play devil's advocate for the house builders, for example. The house builders obviously want to do aspirational things like that, and they want to do social things like that. Unfortunately, they're led by shareholders who want a proper return on investment, the highest return possible, and the highest return possible investment for a builder is a 2-story house or a 3-story townhouse or apartments. There's no real money. There's no a real high return unless a house builder can tell me anything different on a plot of land, which basically the whole footprint is taken up by one level living, a bungalow.
Yeah.
Because that one level living could have at least possibly 3 or 4 stories on it with apartments, or it could potentially have a 2-story house on it, which would actually be a better return because you're building, you're getting more money for it, but you're building on less of a footprint, if that makes sense. So that's where I'd argue for house builders. But the difficulty is, even if a house builder turns around and says, I tell you what, we will do this as part of our commitment and we will take less profit. And hopefully every other house builder will do this. Another house builder's just, well, we're not going to play that game. So we're not bothered. And really, they're then losing out as a result of maximising the profit for their shareholders, which is the director's duty. Remember, they've got a legal duty to account, to actually be a steward of the company on behalf of their shareholders. And actually, one of the requirements is actually just maximise returns for them. That's kind of one of the things they've got to do as an actual company director. Let's get back to the bedroom standard and talk about that. So the bedroom standard allocates a separate bedroom to each of these groups. So this is how we are splitting it down. And this is according to the Office of National Statistics. So a bedroom for an adult couple, a bedroom for any remaining adult 21 years or over, 2 adolescents, a bedroom. That means between the age of 10 to 20 years of the same sex. So 2 boys could share a room, or 2 girls could share a room together. It goes down to a different criteria when it's 1 adolescent, because, let me think, 1 adolescent, so it's age 10 to 20, and 1 child, age 9 years or under, of the same sex as well. 2 children, age 9 years or under, of the same sex. So in other words, if a child gets to the age of 9 and of 10 and over, and they cannot share, according to the Office of National Statistics, they're not meant to share with a sibling who is actually of an opposite sex. So that's one of the things, and any remaining child aged 9 years or under. So it kind of limits the requirements. I mean, what age are your children?
3 and 8.
Thank
3
God
and
you got
8.
that right.
So yeah, it was Jack's birthday yesterday.
Like,
That's why.
don't ask me, by the way. So 3 and 8, so they can still have a bedroom together because it's a boy and a girl.
Yeah.
But when the oldest one at 8 gets to 10, then technically not under any rules or anything, but under the guidelines of the Office of National Statistics about the spare bedrooms and allocation, technically they should have a room on their own. So you'd need 2 rooms then, if that's the case. So with this serious overcrowding, why is this under-occupation happening? And is there a better use of the homes, Jimmy?
Well, Britain has an aging population just over 1 in 5, or 18.6% of Britain's population are aged 65 years or older, compared to 1 in 6, which was 16.4% a decade ago.
This is because they're living longer, isn't it? They're living a lot longer. And this is what I talk about, you know, if you're building 25,000 houses a year across Scotland for your requirements to keep up with the aging population and the way people are, the mix of how people live now. Because normally, you know, years and years ago, everybody used to pile into the same house and it'd be an extended family in the same house. But now every man and their dog wants a separate house to themselves. And it's just the way it is. So more houses are required as a result of it. But as if you're doing 25,000 every single year, and suddenly the average age of a person in mortality rates goes from, for example, 76 to 77, it means instantly you need another 25,000 houses, because these people will live longer, if that makes sense. With that extra age on average. So that's what the difficulty is. As people get healthier and more and wiser and understand and hang around longer, the aging population causes an issue with housing as well. And again, we'll come back to saying, you said it there, Jimmy, it's now gone from 1 in 6 a decade ago to 1 in 5. That's 20% almost of Britain's aging population are over 65. And in the last 10 years, what's happened in the last 10 years then?
In the last 10 years, many of Britain's baby boom generation, currently aged 59 years to 77 years of age, have entered retirement. Most of these have extra bedrooms and are in homes owned by these baby boomers, who are probably still living in their original family homes. That's what I said at the start. Sentimental, it's hard to get rid of it. And they bought them in sort of the 1980s or 1990s to raise their children. And yet they still live there years after their children have left home.
My mother and father
and it will get worse.
They've got the original house on the links from when I was 11 years old. So that's literally 45 years. 45 years ago. So they're still in that house after 45 years, and they've got no desire to downsize, because, you know, I'm going to say it and folk will go, that's a bit weird. But my dad goes, well, I'll be dead soon anyway. so why would I bother moving? It's like they don't want the hassle. I mean, that's another thing that comes into play. It's a lot of elderly people just don't want the hassle of moving, and the kind of thing. It's like what Andrea said: if they can afford to stay, well, I'll just stay.
Yeah, I get that a lot. But also, I suppose people, it depends on their circumstances. If they don't do it now, then when are you going to do it? Are you going to do it when it's too late? But that's a slightly different subject.
When you say too late, that's exactly right, isn't it? Because it's too late. Too late means you can't climb the stairs anymore. You know, you've maybe got to the point where, you know, you can navigate the stairs right now. I mean, my mother and father just can navigate this. I'm terrified in case they fall down, to be honest. But I'll be fine. It's like, well, you just need one fall and that's the end. You're in hospital and you're not coming back out. I mean, I'm quite straightforward with that with them. But that's all it takes. And you never want to be left in a position. And this is what I'll say to most people listening. You never want to be left in a position where you're forced to sell your house because of your circumstances. You're probably better to bite the bullet now and actually just get on with it and do it before that happens, because you don't know what the market's going to be like at the point that you sell. Now, when you sell, you're normally downsizing to a far smaller property, which is probably more affordable, and you're releasing a lot of money. So if you're actually selling a big house and the market's dropped as a result, if you wait too long, then you've probably lost money because you're going down to a smaller property. So you're taking a bigger hit, because 10% of 500,000 is 50 grand. 10% of 200,000 is 20 grand.
Yeah.
So even if the market drops, the person selling a £500,000 to go into a £200,000 house is actually, in real terms, losing £30,000 on a market drop. So that's why you want to be in a position to do it. And God forbid, you maybe get to a market where you maybe can't sell it within a certain period of time, and you're stuck in that house for the next 6 months, 9 months, possibly. That could be quite difficult and challenging, especially because you have to move for your circumstances and then you're stuck. What if you have to move and then you have to buy? You've got no other choice. You've got a second homes tax, and then you've only got 18 months to sell your existing property. So you could be nailed with having a 6% bill, which is £12,000 on a £200,000 property. You might actually lose because you might not be able to sell your house within the 18-month period that you're given for the grace of having two homes, even though you've got the money to buy your next house. That's another thing for people in bigger homes that are thinking about downsizing. I've got to think about and I keep saying you're better to do it now on your terms than actually wait for for basically circumstances to dictate you've got to do it.
And then when you talk, sorry, Karen, Jim.
And when you think about it, it'll get worse through the 2020s as the number of Brits living in homes greater than their needs will actually grow further as the demographics of the British population shift.
Yeah.
Now, we've talked about this before. There's about 68 million bedrooms in England and Wales, for example, and even if nobody shared a room, there'd be enough for every one of the 59 million of us to have a bedroom and still have 8 million spare rooms.
Yeah, that's crazy, isn't it? And if you break that down, if you think there's 8 million spare rooms, how many houses is that? If you break them all into 3-bedroom houses, that's unbelievable.
I mean, they're very unequally distributed between households. I mean, so what is the answer there?
Some on the left suggest we forcibly make these older, mature Fife homeowners, people sell their homes.
Yeah.
It's their property. As Andrea said, they paid the mortgage.
Wow.
Worked for it for years, especially when the mortgage interest rates were around about 15% then or above, unless it's their choice if they want to move or not.
Absolutely. I wouldn't be pleased at all if someone came along for me and says, your size criteria no longer fits your house. You have to sell it or we'll penalise you. That is not the way forward. I would definitely not think. But you're absolutely right. That is kind of the left's idea, the sort of socialist way to in terms of the property. Yet it's their property. You've said that, and they pay their mortgage on it for years, especially with the mortgage interest rates when they were at 15%. And you're absolutely right. It is their choice to move or not. So some of the difficulties are that downsizing in Fife, for example, often needs to make financial sense for mature homeowners. And this is because we've probably touched on it a wee bit there. Most mature Fife homeowners live in average priced homes and suitable bungalows. Even though they're smaller, often cost as much, if not more, than the larger family homes. This is because they're on a bigger footprint. It's you know the expression location, location, location. It's the classic example. It's down to location. It's also down to plot size that you're using. Because if you take a typical 2-bedroom flat ex-local authority and leave in, and it would go for 75,000. But if you took that same ex-local authority property in St Andrews, it's exactly the same property, that would go for 250,000 almost. So that shows you the differential between the location and the land it's sitting on. But as well, if you take some of the houses on the typical new build estates that have been built, they're almost less. They're actually sometimes less than the actual price of the bungalows, and yet the bungalows have less bedrooms.
Yeah, it's all about, as you say, location. There'll be people on like the outskirts of St Andrews in their 4-bedroom houses at like 400,000, but a bit closer to the town at a street or the streets and the bungalows are. They're 2-bedroom bungalows that are detached with a garage. You're also looking to pay 400, around about 400,000 for one of those for a property that's double the size.
And it depends on location as well. Look, Andrea says my mum has been in a 4-bedroom bungalow since 1967. I'll leave it in a. She'll leave in a box, basically. She says, and genuinely, it is the disruption that a lot of people don't want to move. If you could show somebody an easy way to move and actually downsize, I mean, you get to. I'll be honest. I'm almost approaching the certain age. Where you think to yourself, God, can I really be bothered? It's like I've got to get rid of all that junk I've accumulated over the years that I've stuffed in cupboards and put in my garage, and just the mere thought of having to do all that, it often outweighs the logical approach to actually saying, no, I need to do it now. So, and a lot of people actually think they're invincible, and in your mind, you'll know you're just a young pup, Jimmy. It's like in your mind, when you get to my age, you still think you're in your 20s, but you realise your body can't keep up. And that's the difficulty, because it's that mindset that then keeps you where you are, because you think, oh, I'm fine here. You know, I can afford that. It's still okay, and I feel okay here. But then you don't want to acknowledge the very fact that it's sometimes getting to the point where you might not be capable in the near future to actually climb the stairs. Or maintain the garden is a big one as well. It comes up a lot.
Oh, yeah, I get that one a lot. I've got, especially with people that are keen gardeners, that's probably sometimes it's harder to leave the garden than it is to leave the home.
Yeah. This issue will slowly worsen in the coming 20 years. So what are actually the options here? What are the options, Jimmy?
I can't find where we are on the script.
There's a necessity then, anyway, I think, put it this way, there's a necessity to motivate builders to build suitable properties for the mature homeowners to move into and to change I would say the dynamics of available properties to buy. For example, there's only 2 million bungalows in the UK, and we only built just over 1,800 bungalows, new bungalows in 2020. Yet 7 in 10 people in the UK, in other words, around about 11 million, aged over 65, actually want to live in a bungalow. Yeah, so out of that 1 in 5, you know, the 10 million actually want to live in a bungalow. These people over 65. Secondly, there needs to be reform in taxation, the taxation rules on housing. Taxation actually works on a carrot or a stick scenario, you know, sort of method. Now, let me explain. The stick could make it less attractive to stay in larger houses by increasing the higher council tax rates and higher council tax rates and higher council tax bands. The carrot could incentivize the maturer household owners to downsize with allowances on stamp duty or inheritance tax, thus making the move so much easier. However, the cost of living crisis and heightened energy bills actually could be doing the government's job for them. The number of larger Fife homes owned by mature household owners, often for over 25 years plus, has been snowballing in the last 6 months. I mean, this is good news for this is good news for younger families that can afford to jump from the smaller homes. Yet many can't afford to make that jump for the same reason why mature homeowners are moving home. So let me give you an example. Let me think about this. How do we think about this? Let me think. Of the 181,000 properties put on the market in the UK in November and December 2022, about 57% were under 350,000. However, of the properties sold in the UK since Christmas 2022, 63% of them have been 350,000 or less. So what am I saying here? What does this actually mean? Well, it means that those homeowners in the middle to upper levels of the Fife property market need to be very realistic with this pricing, as the supply of the mid to high range properties is actually outstripping demand.
Yeah.
So whilst whilst it's not a good distribution of housing if you have some people in overcrowded households and others with spare bedrooms, everyone should be able to choose how they live. Yeah?
Yeah, I totally agree.
Why do many household owners delay downsizing then?
I would say it's because they prefer to grow old in their family home, as I said at the start, the sentimental thing, rather than downsize. And we often see mature
Yeah.
homeowners downsizing too late when they say they've had a fall, they're unable to manage the basic gardening and cleaning, etc. And the house actually, or their home actually becomes a hazard, not a home.
Which is what I go back to every single time. We see this almost every other day, don't we? Because we visit people in their homes, and this is the stories that we get told all the time. It is people that have got onset illnesses that are about due, maybe just been diagnosed. It is people that, they're maybe thought they would have been better than they were, but they're now deteriorated quite quickly. It happens quite a lot. I mean, the downsizing phase will continue to grow, and it will probably peak in the mid 2030s. I think the issue is, I actually can't see builders or the government building hundreds of thousands of bungalows in the next decade. I don't think that's going to happen.
And do you know of any new developments in Fife of bungalows?
There's never it tends to be, as I said, it tends to be the two-story family units, the terraced houses, the apartments. I think that's the biggest difficulty. The elderly population tend to go for when they get a chance, the lower, the ground floor apartments are the perfect ones for them. But most elderly people just don't want to live in an apartment with somebody above them, because it's like, I've lived in a house on my own and had the peace and enjoyment for all my life. I've got a decent amount of wealth. Why should I have to have someone right above me? Why could someone not out there build that? Now, you could argue there's the availability of land. Well, I'll put that to bed straight away. The whole world population can fit in New York, on the landmass of New York. Yeah, the whole of the world's population can fit in the landmass of New York. Literally, the world's population is only 1% of the land. That's it. So to say to anybody that there's not enough land, I think the issue here is there's not enough planning consent to allow for infrastructure to be built in order to accommodate this new mix of aging population. I think that's where the problem lies. So
I totally agree.
Maybe you should consider making a move in the next few years, or even maybe consider it now for some people, when you will have a better choice of bungalows to move to. I mean, that could be possible as well. I can't see that happening. I think, unless it's forced, as I said, by legislation, where there's a requirement, just like what you've got, just like, for example, when they put a new development in place, you're basically told, unless you pay a huge penalty, you will put some social housing in that development. Unless you pay a huge penalty to get out of that and not have social housing in that development. So that's the way it's going. So if they can do that for social housing, why can't they do that for bungalows then? That's one for you, Shona Robson, the housing minister. Yeah. If you can do it for social housing on a building site, on a new build, why can't you force builders to do it for bungalows for an aging population? Because I was told categorically by someone else, it was a politician, that no, you can't force a house builder to do that. Well, we can force them to do it in social housing, to have it on their site. So why can't we force them to do it for that? I think I'll actually tag Shona Robson in this. I'll give her grief again.
That's not like you.
I'll give her grief again, and I'll actually tag Jenny Gilruthan as well, just to give her grief as well. And I might just do Nicola Sturgeon and Patrick Harvey at the same time. When I share it to me, when I will do that. I'll go on my page after this, my personal page, and I will tag these people in, because there's no particular reason why they can't legislate for bungalows on a new development and say it has to be done. Because if you can do it for social housing, surely you can do it in an ideal world, and everything the same. Surely you can do it for bungalows for an aging population. What do you think about mature homeowners, about having larger properties? What do you think that's going to happen?
Well, if mature homeowners have larger properties and from working hard and paying taxes, then quite frankly, it's nobody else's business,
Yeah.
and no one should force them out. You
Yeah.
may want to have extra space for children and grandchildren to come and stay, or as an office, a television room, hobby room. Yet, please, I must stress, these are just
they're
our
only
suggestions.
suggestions. And you're absolutely right, but we get that all the time. I often say to a lot of people that are actually downsizing, you maybe won't be able to go from the huge house you've got now to a wee 2-bedroom bungalow. You might want to consider a transitional arrangement where you go to the huge house, and in between somewhere for maybe about 5 years, you find a property where you can have living all on one level. In other words, you've got your dining room, your kitchen, your living room, your bath, or your shower room. It'll probably be a wet room downstairs, and you have almost barrier free. In other words, if you do end up finding yourself in a wheelchair, it can go through every doorway downstairs, and then you don't need to navigate the stairs, because the stairs and the bedrooms upstairs, and you have a bedroom downstairs as well, by the way, and the bedrooms upstairs would be probably kept for the grandchildren and visiting. That's often the case. However, I've got to say, another one is, I usually talk to some people that say, I don't want to move because the grandchildren might be still visiting. And I'm saying, how often do they visit every year? And they go, well, it's only once a year. Okay. Why do you not just put them up in the hotel? Would that not make more sense? Or just get them an Airbnb and they'll have a place to themselves. And I know you'd love to have them stay with you, but really, do you want to lock up all that capital in a house that you're trying to release for you? Remember, you can't take it with you. And if you lock it up into the house and it has an inheritance tax problem, because obviously you want to pass it on to your children, because you think that, and you could end up having inheritance tax. So again, you need to speak to an advisor about that implication, about your tax implications if you're at the inheritance tax threshold, because that could have implications as well. But if you've only got one there, and you're looking at maybe a £500,000 house, and you can go down to 200,000, you can release £300,000. I'll be honest, as a younger person, I would have loved my parents to downsize, release the money for themselves, and travel the world and enjoy it. By the time they're ready to go, I don't need it anymore. That's a message to every single parent out there, elderly parent out there now. Their siblings are away, they've got the house all themselves, they've got all that money locked up in their property. Go and enjoy it. Enjoy it. And you'll probably find that your children have actually made something for themselves. They've got houses for themselves. They don't need that money anymore, but they would rather see you enjoy it as a result. That's another train of thought, which I actually advocate all the time. But you're right, Jimmy. If mature homeowners have larger properties, and it's their right to do that, and it's no one else's business. And the extra grand, the hobby rooms and the television and craft rooms and all the rest of it can come into play. And yeah, they're only our suggestions. I mean, these are our thoughts. I'll be interested to hear out there, anybody else's thoughts on this, and please feel free to put comments in as well. And if you want to speak to us direct about your circumstances personally, for yourself, then by all means contact us as well. You might not be in the process. Right, Jimmy, do you want to finish off a wee bit here, and then I'll finish off with my bit? So what's your final thoughts on this?
I think we'll lead into a bit what you're saying is, if you are considering it in the near future, then speak to an advisor like ourselves to talk you through the whole process and whether now's the best time for you or later. As you said, and what we said throughout the show, is the worst thing that can be happen is you're leaving it too late, and you should be thinking about the future and taking actions now.
Well, as I say, my final thoughts on this, as I say every single time, you don't know what you don't know, and it's our job to know that, so we can advise you of that, and then we could probably tell you some information which gives you more information and more of the. Here it is, the facts rather than the opinion of other people, and an opinion it's free and literally it's worth that, if that makes sense. It's the facts that we're delivering to you, so you can make an opinion. You can make a decision based on facts rather than somebody else's opinion. And that's the most important thing. So if you're out there and you're considering it, or you're even at the early stages of doing this, it's no problem. We can come round and see you. We can sit and have a conversation with you. We can maybe talk to you on the phone about it as well. I've actually just got somebody phoning me right now about that exact same thing. They want to move back to St Andrews. They want to, get a better place because all their, things is in St Andrews. So they're thinking about St Andrews now, from where they are right now, and possibly a more manageable property maybe, or maybe a more aspirational area they would want to be because all their friends are there as well. So that's the type of things. Now, this person, actually, I'm talking about right now on my phone. They're trying to contact me. It was last year or the year before that I actually went to see them and sit down with them and explore their options. And it's only now they've said, look, we've now come to the conclusion that this is what we want to do. I have been speaking to them for the last 3 days about the circumstances. They've been phoning me and asking for a bit more advice and how to negotiate for the house that they're buying, potentially as well. And then also the tax implications, because I'm an accountant as well. And the tax implications about to buy one and buy another one at the same time, and how they can get the EDS back, which is the 6% the government asks you to pay right now. And then you could actually claim it back within the 18-month period. So these are all things that they've taken into account. And then also the options as well is because they've got a house to sell. Is it possible to buy another house? They've got a decent amount of money to put down as a deposit as well. And so then will that allow them to buy that house? And my answer to that was absolutely. I don't think any mortgage company is going to turn around and say, well, you've got a sizable deposit for your next home. We're not going to help you out with that, considering you're selling your other home, which is debt free. So again, that is entirely possible. But they never actually saw that as possible until I spoke to them about it, and then it started to all make sense. So I think if you're out there, you're tuning in and you're listening and you're thinking, I'm not very sure what I'm going to do, then it's better to get the advice based on the facts and then make a decision on that. And if it isn't the decision to sell now, then it's the right decision. We've done our job because we've helped you do that. If it is sell now, then, hopefully we'll be the people that you'll actually choose to do it because we know what we're talking about. And that's it. Thanks very much for coming on the show, Jimmy. Really appreciate that.
Thanks, everybody.
And until next time, guys, I'm Jim Parker for Fife Properties TV, and he's been Jimmy Mullen. Bye-bye.